For the past several decades, most innovation in the world of information technology has been driven by one of two things, either reducing costs or improving top-line revenue. But for the first time, we're starting to see something new. That is, with the emergence of connected devices, known as the Internet of Things, we're starting to see a new player sort of come to the front in terms of what's driving changes in technology, and that is risk. The ability to mitigate risk in multiple business verticals is starting to change the way people are conceiving of things. So when we map that to what does it mean to be a digital insurance company, our hypothesis is that every property insurance product, fundamentally at its core, is actually a digital Internet of Things platform. I'd like to take a look now at what that looks like. So what you're going to see here is on the left-hand side, we see an iPad providing a connected experience to multiple stakeholders, and what we see on the right-hand side here is sort of an envisioned connected experience. This could be a connected hotel room, a connected apartment, a connected small business. But the idea, what this is representative of, is that every physical component that has risk associated with it can now be digitized. And there's two goals here. One is, as the iPad is connected through the cloud to these devices, we are creating fundamentally and foremost a really compelling digital experience for multiple stakeholders. But one of the important side effects of this is that there's digital exhaust that's created as the device data flows through the cloud, and we can actually capture that digital exhaust and use that to do data mining to create better actuarial models of how things are working. And importantly, in real time, we can actually create, along with sensing physical changes and physical issues, we can actually actuate change so that we can prevent catastrophic loss, whether through direct actuation of a device or through the alerting of people who can. So what you're seeing here is a bunch of devices. We have a smart thermostat, a motion detector, a thermometer and humidity sensor. This is a water sensor, a reed switch for detecting when doors and windows are open. This is a night light. Here we have relays that control various lights. And then here we have a smart lock to both control and sense when a door has changed its state. So what we'd like to do now is take a look at the actual digital experience. So here we can imagine we have an app which is used by multiple stakeholders across multiple segments. So Meyer Real Estate, for example, could be a multi-unit dwelling, somebody who's managing a bunch of condo or apartment units. We have a scenario in hospitality. This could be a large hotel. And then finally, we see a small business. So you can imagine a franchise of Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something of that ilk. If we look at the hospitality scenario, you can imagine that you have a room for housekeeping. You know, the primary thing that they want to know is a room currently occupied or not? That way they don't have to create a cumbersome experience for the guest by knocking on the door to see if they're there or not. So whether or not this is occupied, that's a combination of this motion detector which is in the room and this reed switch which detects whether or not the door is open. There's an algorithm that's applied to those two physical devices to give this housekeeper a better experience, but then she then passes on to the guest. While the housekeeper is providing a better experience for the guests, all that data, the digital exhaust from those device data, are captured here. So a hotel manager can actually see room occupancy. Every event that happens at the level of the hotel room is stored over here in the cloud. We can get energy consumption statistics and so on. If we switch contexts, we can actually see that in the context of a multi-unit dwelling, this is a case where the digital experience which benefits the owner translates into a better set of actuarial data for the insurer in terms of providing context for how that property is insured and maintain its high quality. So for the example, for the perspective of the homeowner, I can go ahead and remotely turn on my bedroom lights, and you'll see here that this bedroom light is turned on. I can turn on the bathroom light. You'll see the bathroom light is turned on. I can turn those both off. If the door, this is the reed switch for the door. If the front door opens, you'll see here that right where the cursor is, that the front door is now open. If I close it, I get a close indication. Same thing with the lock. If I change the lock status here from open to close, there's an indicator that that has changed as well. And then in the case of water, here we can take the case where we have water that's an issue. And if I take this water detector here, you'll notice that the water sensor by the sink, which I have the cursor over now, is going to say that it's wet. And while it's wet, not only do we get the alert all the way up in our app, wherever we happen to be around the world that's connected to the cloud, also locally, we see an alarm has been triggered here in the form of this light as an example of what could happen to trigger other actuation. And then once the system is dry, we see the state changes throughout. So this is a case where we have a really strong digital experience powered by an iPad, but we have a bunch of data powered by APIs on the back end. So let's take a quick look at sort of the back end here. So what we're going to do is pull up a couple tools. The first one is this is an API, generic API browser. And what we're going to do is just kind of cruise through the API and see that this is a full-on REST API with hypermedia. And hypermedia is sort of an advanced version of REST, which actually allows us to power these digital experiences more easily. So for example, if I do a search on this particular server, what I'm going to look for is that water sensor that we showed a second ago. And we'll take a look at what's available for us on the water sensor. So this is just, if you're an API nerd, you'll see that this URL here is just saying of all the servers in the world, we want this particular server. And then of all the devices attached to that server, we want this particular identified device, which happens to be our water sensor. And here I can see the current status of the water sensor in a bunch of different ways. And importantly, I can subscribe to the WebSockets right here. So this is just like REST is a standard, WebSockets is another standard. And here I'm going to connect to it. So what I'm doing now is connecting directly to the data coming off of that water sensor stream. And as I do it, you'll see that we're actually getting data. And this data, see that right now it says wet. If I let go, it says dry. Along with getting streamed to my laptop, it's also being stored in the data repository. And if we were to bring back the iPad app, we'll see that this is actually the same data that's powering this user interface here, right? So as I change, the state changes in the UI, the nightlight shows up, and we're streaming this data. So this is a case where the digital experience, which is great for the user, also creates digital exhaust, which is great for the property insurer. And what we see and what we envision for insurers is that every insurer has an Internet of Things ecosystem around them. So they have, this is sort of representative of what would be in a smart room. All these components in white actually come from an Apigee Link customer called Centralite, but this lock is from a third party called Yale. So the Yale lock, which as we see, we move that, the lock changes, it's fully integrated at the level of the API and the device data that's being stored. So in a nutshell, how we see this is, what does digital insurance mean in the age of the Internet of Things? We think every property insurance product at its core is a digital Internet of Things platform.